Okay, a short article to conclude this mini-series about Great Zimbabwe. I'm going to talk you through a Thought Co article, which I'll drop in the about section, so you can read it for yourself if you fancy it. So they talk about the periods of occupation at the site as determined by the finds, the remnants of bits of pottery, metals, and the buildings, the styles of the buildings themselves. So they separate the occupation of the site into 5 periods. The first period is from 300 to 500. Again, the area was settled in the 300s, and we know that the site was settled at least from the 400s. The site itself, so 300 to 400 was the early Gokomere farming communities, Gokomere, and metal working in iron and copper. So this is thought to have been derived from the K2 culture, and the K2 culture is generally hypothesized to have been a Khoikhoi culture. So Capoid pastoralists, but not strict Capoids like the San, but those who had admixed to some degree with the Bantu and adopted pastoralism. And then it moves on to, it has a little bit of a gap here, but it moves on to 600 to 900. It talks about the Zizo settlement. Zizo is a word that's used to describe both the whole period and the specific portion of it. And yep, there were farming, iron and copper working going on, and so that's the latter part of period 1. So at some point towards the end of this period, there's a brief hiatus where the site doesn't seem to be occupied, and then there's the late Iron Age, what they call Gumanye settlement, which starts at the hill complex, and there's bronze, iron and copper working present. That's 900 to 1000, and this is what they call period 2. And from period 3, what they say is the major building period starts. So they have clay plastered houses, new architectural style, costumed architectural style, P and PQ, which is what was previously the way the history of the site was previously separated out, were according to the architectural methods used. It was P, Q, PQ and R. But they say that doesn't fully explain it. So then we have this P and PQ architecture. We have copper, gold, brass, bronze and iron on the site. Then in 1200, period 1200 to 1700, so this is right through the Kingdom of Zimbabwe period and to after its decline. The great enclosure is built, the first expansion of the settlement into the valleys, lavish pottery, and the class Q architecture. And then obviously the abandonment there in the 16th century. So copper, iron, gold, bronze and brass on the site. And then there's another hiatus after the decline of Great Zimbabwe. They say it might have been due to a water crisis, but it's thought to have been due to a decline in the importance of the centre in terms of trade networks and gold mining, as well as their defeat by the state that succeeded them, by Mutapa. Then it was reoccupied 1700 to 1900 by the Karanga peoples, and they have this new R architectural style. So just to conclude, they talk also about reassessing the chronology. They talk about the P, the Q, the PQ and the R architectural styles, and they suggest these dates. They suggest that the hill complex, which we've already noted, they said was the centre of the first area of occupation, began construction sometime between 1100 and 1281. The camp ruins and the valley enclosures, so that's most of the other smaller ruins, from 1211 to 1446. So that's quite late in the history. That's towards the decline, when the last of those constructions may have been built. And the great enclosure between 1226 and 1406. So that's in the kind of middle period of occupation. So to summarize, the site was first occupied from the 400s, or possibly the 300s, through to the 500s, either by Akoi people or by the ancestral Shona. And the site was then reoccupied later, and by the 1000s and or the 1100s, it had already become, or rather, construction was started in the 1000s. It had become a regional power by the 1100s, and then by the 1200s, it became the dominant culture in the area for about 200 years, until its decline and its succession by a site further north. The cultures it succeeded were further west, and then after, in 1450, it ceased to be the dominant capital in the region, and it remained a settlement, but a minor and dwindling one, for another 100 or so years. Then, much later, it was reoccupied by a people group from this culture further west, by the Bakalanga, and they also had a short period of construction.